My hands trembled slightly as I adjusted the thin strap of my black dress, a choice I hadn't overthought until now. The evening was meant to be ordinary, just dinner with my best friend and her husband. But something about tonight carried a weight I couldn't explain, as though the air itself pulsed with an unseen tension. When Daniel opened the door, his eyes lingered on me longer than usual, a quiet pause that made my breath falter. "You look stunning," he said softly, the words simple but threaded with something more, something unspoken. I smiled politely, brushing it off as his charm, the warmth I'd always known him for. After all, he was Emma's husband, my closest friend since childhood, the one person who had stood by me through every season of life. And yet, as he took my coat, his fingers brushed mine with a hesitation that sent a ripple through me, too sharp to ignore. Emma's voice floated from the kitchen, bright and carefree, filling the home with her usual glow. "Come in. I'm just finishing the salad," she called, laughter woven into every word. Her joy was a comfort, a shield against the subtle storm beginning to stir beneath the surface. We gathered around the table, candles flickering between us. The city, lights of London spilling in through the tall windows. The food smelled of rosemary and garlic, Emma's signature touch, her way of making every gathering feel alive. I wanted to focus on her stories, her animated hands, the way her eyes lit up, as she spoke of her new design project. But Daniel's presence pressed at the edges of my attention, unrelenting, magnetic. Every time Emma turned to refill our glasses or fetch another dish, his gaze slid back to me, holding me still. It wasn't overt. It was quiet. A brush of his knee against mine under the table. A glance that lingered a second. Too long. A softness in his voice when he asked about my week. A depth he didn't carry when speaking to his own wife. My pulse betrayed me, quickening, as though my body recognized a truth my mind refused to name. "Everything all right?" he asked at one point, his tone casual but his eyes searching. I nodded, forcing a smile. "I'm fine." But fine was a lie. I was caught between comfort and unease, loyalty and curiosity. Emma returned with dessert plates, her laughter filling the silence I hadn't noticed until it broke. She set a slice of her famous lemon tart before me, her hand brushing my shoulder affectionately. "I've missed this," she said warmly. "Just the three of us again, like old times." Old times. Back when everything was simple. Back before moments like this one. Before the weight of Daniel's presence became something I could no longer dismiss. As she leaned across the table describing her day, Daniel's hand shifted under the tablecloth. It rested lightly on my knee, deliberate and steady. I froze, my fork suspended midair, my chest tightening with a rush of heat and panic. I should have moved. I should have laughed it off, shifted away, anything to break the spell. But I didn't. For a heartbeat too long, I stayed. His touch burned through the fabric of my dress, anchoring me in a silence I couldn't escape. Then he withdrew, slow and careful, as if testing the limits of something fragile. Emma's laughter carried on, unaware, and I sat there, caught, between guilt and a flicker of something I dared not name. When the meal ended, we moved to the living room, wine glasses in hand. The city outside hummed quietly, a rhythm against the soft glow of candles scattered across the shelves. Emma curled onto the sofa, her feet tucked beneath her, still talking, her voice a melody I'd always loved. Daniel sat across from me, his posture relaxed, but his eyes said everything he didn't. They followed me, traced me, as if every movement mattered. I shifted under the weight of it, sipping my wine too quickly, hoping to drown the questions rising in my chest. Why did it feel different tonight? Why did his presence, so familiar, suddenly carry an edge of danger? And why, despite the guilt pressing at my ribs, did I feel my body answering him in ways I couldn't control? Emma excused herself to check on the coffee, her soft hum fading as she disappeared into the kitchen. The silence she left behind was deafening. Daniel leaned forward, his voice low. "You've changed," he murmured. The words brushed against me like a secret. I swallowed hard. "Have I?" He nodded slowly, his gaze unwavering. Something about you feels different tonight. I opened my mouth to answer, but nothing came. Because maybe he was right. Maybe something in me had shifted, something I didn't yet understand. The sound of Emma returning broke the moment, her smile as radiant as ever, her trust a weight I suddenly couldn't bear. She set the cups on the table, her voice light as she teased Daniel about drinking too much wine. We laughed together, the three of us. But beneath the laughter, the silence of that unspoken moment lingered, heavy and unresolved. The clock ticked softly, each second stretching, longer than it should as the night deepened. Emma poured the coffee with care, her laughter spilling into the room as if nothing could ever fracture the peace between us. I forced myself to smile, to answer her questions, to match her warmth. But every word tasted different now. Every glance from Daniel pulled at me like a thread I couldn't untangle. We lingered over dessert, Emma sharing stories of her childhood memories, her voice soft and playful. She was radiant, glowing with trust. Her love for Daniel so clear in every stolen glance she gave him, and yet, even then, his eyes searched for mine, subtle, measured. But there. Each time our gazes met, I felt the air grow heavier, as though we were both balancing on the edge of something dangerous. When Emma stood to clear the plates, Daniel leaned just enough that I caught the faintest whisper of his voice. "You felt it too, didn't you?" The words sent a tremor through me, one I could neither deny nor acknowledge. I swallowed, my throat tight, and forced a shake of my head. But he smiled faintly, as though my silence was an answer of its own. Emma returned, humming softly, stacking dishes with her usual grace. Her presence was grounding, a reminder of everything I stood to lose if I let this moment spiral any further. I tried to focus on her laughter, on the comfort of a friendship that had lasted more than 2 decades. But the ghost of his touch still lingered, a fire beneath. My skin I couldn't extinguish. The evening slipped into quieter tones, the wine making us softer, slower. We moved back to the dining table for a final toast, glasses clinking under the soft glow of candles nearly burned out. Emma's joy filled the space, her words full of gratitude, her eyes glistening as she thanked me for being there. "For us," she said warmly. "For always being part of us." I nodded, hiding the storm raging behind my smile. Because beneath that gratitude, Daniel's foot brushed against mine under the table, deliberate yet fleeting, a silent reminder that the tension hadn't disappeared. I froze. Emma didn't notice. She never did. Not the subtle shift in his tone when he spoke to me. Not the way his laughter softened when it was directed my way. Not the moments that stretched just a little too long when she turned her back. Hated myself for noticing, for feeling, for wanting answers to questions I should never ask. When the clock neared midnight, I finally rose, clutching my coat like armor. Emma embraced me tightly, her arms warm, her voice full of love. "I'm so glad you came tonight," she whispered. "We have to do this more often." I nodded, forcing the words past my lips. "Of course. Always." Daniel stood behind her, his eyes finding mine over her shoulder. A quiet take care, a flicker of something unsaid, something dangerous. I stepped into the cool night air, the city alive with distant sounds, the wind sharp against my skin. The world carried on as though nothing had happened, and yet everything had changed. I walked quickly, my heels striking the pavement, each step echoing louder than the last. The warmth of Emma's hug still clung to me, a reminder of loyalty. The heat of Daniel's touch still burned on my skin, a reminder of temptation. 2 truths colliding, 2 worlds I couldn't reconcile. As I disappeared into the quiet streets, one thought followed me, relentless and unforgiving. What happens the next time?